Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another computer science lecture for 9618 AS level, and we are going to continue discussing section number 6, security, privacy and data integrity. Last time we discussed half of section 6.1, that was data security, and we are going to continue discussing it today as well. So the next data security method that we have in our syllabus is known as firewall. A firewall is a software or a hardware that sits between the user's computer and the network, and it filters information going in and out of the network. Firewalls carry out the following tasks. They examine network traffic, they check whether data moving in and out of network meets a given set of criteria or not. If it doesn't meet the criteria, that traffic or that communication is blocked instantly and the user is warned. They log all of the network traffic, all the incoming and outgoing packets. Rules can be set to block access to unwanted websites or IP addresses. Firewalls also prevent viruses or hacking attacks. They also warn the user if a software on the user system is trying to access an external data source, such as trying to download automatic software updates. Here is a little diagram to make you understand firewalls better. Then we have anti-malware softwares. These softwares are intended to protect a user system from malicious codes. There are two common types: the antivirus softwares and the anti-spywares. Antivirus software scans the computer to find and eradicate any potential viruses on the computer, whereas anti-spyware softwares detect and deletes any spyware illegally installed on a computer. If you don't remember what a spyware is a software that basically records all of the keystrokes made by the user and sends them to its master or the hacker in form of a text file. Analyzing that data can reveal information about the ID and the password of different websites and different social media or banking accounts. These are often packed into a single bundle, means the antivirus and the anti-spyware are commonly packed into a single bundle which deletes and detects all the spyware, viruses, malwares, etc. As well as they have a personal firewall as well, and this is commonly known as anti-malware bundle. Another way of securing your data is to use encryption. The process of converting data, which is known as plain text, into coded message, which is known as ciphertext, which cannot be interpreted or understood without a decryption key. Process of encryption is done through an encryption algorithm. This doesn't stop hacking of data, but the sad hacker is left unable to read the stolen data. Threats to data security. The first threat is hacking, or rather malicious hacking. The act of gaining illegitimate access to a computer system. This can lead to identity theft, data loss, data corruption, deletion, or sensitive data theft. It can be prevented by firewalls, strong passwords, and by installing anti-hacking software on your system. The second form of hacking we have is known as ethical hacking. So basically, active hacking is of two types: the malicious hacking and the ethical hacking. Ethical hacking means the act of trying to penetrate a company's security measures and check their robustness against hacking attempts by an ethical hacker, which are also known as white hat hacker. This is usually not done to harm the data or the company, but rather this is usually a paid task, or it is a bounty task where the company offers a reward to the hacker who can infiltrate their system and point some potential weaknesses if the hacker succeeds in doing so with a proof that yes, I was in your server, here's the proof, and I got in at so and so time, if that proof can be verified, then the company officially pays a reward to the successful hacker. Again, all of this is done as just to check one security, or to as a security measure, rather than being done to in order to harm somebody. That is why ethical hacking is acceptable in the society, whereas malicious hacking is not. Then we have malwares, softwares that can cause harm to users' computer or their data. It can be of following types. The first one is viruses, a program that can copy itself on the hard drive and can delete or corrupt data files or even cause the computer to malfunction. A virus only works on active hosts, so just remember that. This can cause loss of data, corruption of files, and or system breakdown. Viruses can be prevented with antivirus software by not opening email attachments from unknown senders and not using softwares from unknown sources. Then we have the spyware or the keylogging software that secretly gets installed on your system and run in the background. They record all the keystrokes which are made by user's keyboard. This information is then sent to the hacker who created the software. This can cause loss of sensitive data such as passwords and login details, as well as the spyware can change users' default web browser and access data stored in cookies. This can be prevented by anti-spyware software and by using mouse and an on-screen keyboard to enter your password whenever you're logging into a sensitive system such as a banking website or a social media account. Then we have phishing. A legitimate looking bogus email is sent to victims containing links to an original like website. The website contains forms to record or capture user data. This can cause loss of personal or sensitive data, fraud, and identity theft. The website looks very much like the original one, so the user thinks they are on the right website. They enter their ID and password, and instead of being signed into their account, the page refreshes and redirects them to the original login page on the original website. The user thinks this is probably just an internet glitch or a browser fault, and they log in again. However, that fake form captures their data and sends it to the hacker, who now has the login details for a innocent victim. This can be prevented by activating phishing scam filters in your email and by carefully examining links in your email before clicking them. An example of phishing is demonstrated below. This email claims to be from Yahoo, but if you examine the link carefully, as you can see, it says we are from Yahoo, and there is a threatening tone that your account is going to be deleted and this and that. And see, this is the upgrade now button, but if you put your mouse over here, then this box would open which says that the link is actually not pointing to yahoo.com. Instead, it is pointing to something like 52.com.co. They are using the name of a popular company, but this is clearly a phishing scam. Plus, if you can see, there are some grammatical mistakes in the email as well. Such phishing emails always contain grammatical errors, spelling mistakes, a threatening tone, as well as links which do not point to the original website. So before opening any link in any email, always examine these 3-4 points about that email to verify their authenticity. Next thing we have is pharming, an act of undercover installation of a malicious script or program that causes the user to be redirected to a fake website. This is often done through DNS cache poisoning. This can cause loss of personal data, fraud, and identity theft. This can be prevented by anti-spyware software or by installing anti-malware software on your system. Basically, what happens, the attacker silently installs a software on the user system which targets a specific website. Whenever the user tries to open that website, such as facebook.com, bankalfala.com, standardchartered.com, or any other website, youtube.com, that software obviously you know the method of DNS resolution. The browser tries to contact the local DNS server in order to retrieve the IP for that website. At that point, the farming software silently goes to the DNS server and changes the IP address in its records, so that even though you type the URL yourself in the web browser, instead of clicking on any link in the email, the IP address you get back from the DNS is not of the actual website. It is of a fake, bogus website which looks exactly like the original one. Now you are redirected to the fake website, and again there's a form that captures your data and then redirects you to the original website. You think there was an internet connectivity issue or maybe a glitch on the website, whereas actually all of your login information has been sent to the hacker without you knowing. Security measures for protecting data. Recovering from data loss. If you have lost your data, then what you can do is, actually data can be lost accidentally due to any of the following reasons. Disks or tape can get corrupted. Disk or tape is destroyed physically. There can be a system crash suddenly. Data is erased or overwritten by mistake. Location of the file is forgotten, or there may have been a natural disaster such as a flood or an earthquake which may cause your system to be destroyed altogether. To avoid such situations, every system should have a backup procedure to recover lost data. The system administrator decides detail of the procedure, but basic principles are followed. Full backup is made at regular intervals, usually on every weekend, or if your data is in bulk or you are very much careful about your data, you can decide for daily backups as well, full system backups. At least 2 previous copies of full backups are kept in storage. Backup is updated daily. Backup disks or tapes are stored away from the system in a fireproof and flood-proof location. Incremental backup is usually done overnight, while the full backup is done on weekend. Incremental backup means that whatever addition was done to the existing files in a 24-hour period, or only those changes are saved at night when the backup procedure is run, whereas on every weekend, when there is not a working day, on the next morning the computer utilizes, or the network administrator utilizes 4 to 5 hours during the night, such as from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. or something like that, to copy each and every bit that is currently available on the system, to make a full backup copy on mostly a cloud server or a remote location in a fireproof and a flood-proof location of the whole system. If it is a 24/7 running system, like banking systems are usually running 24/7 because they provide online banking facility to the users. Changes can occur during data backup, which can create data inconsistency. The system would be having a slightly different version of a file because a transaction has been performed, whereas the backup would not be having those changes. This can be handled in 2 ways. Freezes the file store while data is being copied, while any changes that happen to system use are recorded elsewhere. The changes are implemented after backup process is finished, or use a disk mirroring where data is simultaneously stored on 2 or more separate physically at remote location system during the normal operation as part of a disaster recovery plan. So in order to deal with such systems, in order to create a proper backup of such systems, we can have 2 possible ways. The first one is usually used by banking systems, that they announce prior to making the backup that, for example, 3 days later on the night of Sunday from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. our system would be down because we'll be doing maintenance or backup. The whole system is frozen for a time period, and then data is backed up. Unless and until backup procedure is completed, the system does not come back online. So the system is temporarily halted, and since the system is frozen, no transactions can be made during that time. So data inconsistencies cannot occur. The second solution is to use disk mirroring techniques, where the system can run 24/7, and whenever some change is done to the data or the system, or a new transaction is done, it is simultaneously recorded on two or three multi or more than two or three, means multiple servers or remote locations. All of those computers, all of those servers are physically miles apart from each other, just like we do in cloud computing, the data redundancy concept, that whatever changes are done to the system, they are simultaneously stored in 3 or 4 different locations or different servers which are miles apart from each other. So the first server may be in India, the second one may be in Africa, and the third one may be in America, the fourth one may be in England. So when your data is being simultaneously saved on 4 different systems which are on 4 different continents or 4 different countries or 4 different cities, that basically means that even if one of your system is down, or even if your a natural disaster strikes your office and it is basically blown to smithereen, your office, your building, your company is flooded, or it is destroyed by an earthquake or a fire maybe, still you have at least 3 more copies of your system which are exactly the same, so you can access them anytime. Restricting access to data. A logged in user doesn't necessarily needs to access all of the files on the system. For example, an employee should be able to use the system to look up another employee's internal phone number, but they should not be able to look up what was the salary paid to the other employee last month, or what is their average pay scale. This is going to cause a lot of issues. Such situations are controlled by the use of applying access rights to different files for different individuals. Protecting data content. Even with the best security measures in place, someone can always override them and gain access to data. This type of access can still be made a waste of time and effort if the stored data cannot be read, if you have applied proper encryption to it. So even if a hacker succeeds in breaking all of your security and still getting into your system or copying some of your files, they would still not be able to read that data or understand it, or all of their effort would just be in vain. This is absolute everything that you need to know for section 6.1. If you want to know more about cybersecurity or what type of threats are there, what is social engineering, and by any chance if you have not studied computer science in your O levels, or you have studied the old syllabus for O level computer science, means you appeared in your exams by October 2022, then I suggest you go down to the list of my lectures, to the videos, search down for lecture 5.3 cybersecurity, and just watch it as a prerequisite to this lecture. Inshallah, you'll understand everything. Still, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments below. I'll definitely respond to all of them. Lastly, if you want a hard copy of these notes for AS level, or if you want the study packs for O levels computer science or IGCSE computer science, or for study notes for physics, O levels or IGCSE, you can order them by using the form link in the description below. Lastly, if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please do so, and give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends as well if you like the content. That's it for today. I'll see you guys in the next lecture, and inshallah in the next lecture we'll wrap up section 6. Take care. Allah Hafiz.